For weeks now, we've been faced with so much uncertainty coming from President Trump. Each day brings new tariff threats. Now, President Trump is threatening tariffs on steel and aluminum. He's pointing his finger at dairy and lumber, shifting timelines, different excuses, chaos and confusion. It's hurting workers, it's hurting businesses, it's hurting investments, and it's hurting families on both sides of the border. It needs to end. That's why I've been crystal clear. Until these tariffs are off the table, until the threat of tariffs is gone for good, Ontario will not relent. We will not back down. Pausing some tariffs, making last-minute exemptions, it won't cut it. We need to end the chaos once and for all. We need to sit down, work together, and land a fair deal. A deal that gives businesses the confidence to invest. A deal that gives workers the security they need and deserve. Until then, Ontario will keep up the fight. We will apply maximum pressure to maximize our leverage. That's why today we're moving forward with a 25% surcharge on electricity exports. For the 1.5 million American homes and businesses that Ontario powers, homes and businesses in Minnesota, Michigan, and New York. This surcharge will cost families and businesses in these states up to $400,000 each and every single day. On an average, this will add around $100 per month to the bills of hardworking Americans. Let me be clear, I will not hesitate to increase this charge. If necessary, if the United States escalates, I will not hesitate to shut the electricity off completely. Believe me when I say I do not want to do this. I feel terrible for the American people because it's not the American people who started this trade war. It's one person who's responsible. That's President Trump. I'd rather be working together. I want to sell the U.S. more energy, more electricity, more critical minerals. I want to make Canada and the United States the richest, most successful, safest, most secure two countries on the planet. But as Premier, my #1 job is to protect the people of Ontario and in hand protect the people of Canada. I will do whatever it takes. I will fight like I've never fought before to protect Ontario. Friends, none of this makes sense. Costly tariffs against your closest friends and allies do not make sense. The U.S. markets have lost trillions in value. Companies are second-guessing investments into the American economy. American workers' jobs are at risk as we speak right now. Cost of hardworking American families will only go up. It doesn't have to be this way. We are stronger when we work together. I hope we can get back to working together, creating jobs, growing our economies, lowering costs for families in both countries. We don't get there by easing up. We will remain strong. We will be relentless.
We have breaking news coming in. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau
will only go up. It doesn't have to be this way. We are stronger when we work together. I hope we can get back to working together, creating. It doesn't have to be this way. We are stronger when we work together. I hope we can get back to working together, creating jobs, growing our economies, lowering costs for families in both countries. We don't get there by easing up. We will remain strong. We will be relentless. We will do whatever it takes to protect Ontario.
In addition to these new retaliatory tariffs from China, Canada's tariffs on the U.S. are still in place. Last week, it put a 25% levy on things like beer, fruit and vegetables, shoes, cosmetics, and more. And today, Ontario starts charging a 25% surcharge on electricity to 3 U.S. states, Minnesota, Michigan, and New York. The tariff war and opposition to President Trump has actually unified Canadians. Listen to these remarks from Mark Carney, who is expected to be Canada's next prime minister. He was just elected to head the Liberal Party yesterday, soon potentially to be sworn in as PM.
The Canadian government has rightly retaliated and is rightly retaliating with our own tariffs that will have maximum impact in the United States and minimum impact here in Canada. And my government will keep our tariffs on until the Americans show us respect.
Let's discuss with Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, which is the province that started to impose that surcharge on 1.5 million homes and businesses in the United States. He also ordered all U.S. alcohol to be removed from Ontario shelves. Premier, thank you so much for sharing part of the afternoon with us. What do you hope to achieve with this surcharge? What needs to happen for you to remove it? Premier, thank you so much for sharing part of the...
Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me on, Boris. And I start off every interview with telling Americans that Canadians love Americans. I love Americans. It's one person that's caused this problem, and that's President Trump. As he is putting tariffs on us, even if he says he's putting it on hold, there's still 60% of goods that are crossing the borders that will be tariffed, and it's hurting both economies. It's hurting the American economy. It's hurting the Canadian economy. Uncertainty is what people don't like hearing in general life, not to mention the markets are tumbling, and investors from around the world are looking twice at America and Canada to invest in. There's no reason for a recession. I call it the self-made Donald Trump recession. He ran on a mandate to lower prices, to make sure we didn't have inflation, to create more jobs, and it's backfired. So let's sit down at the table and let's start working on a new USMCA deal, even though President Trump said it was the greatest deal he's ever made. Nothing's changed, so I guess it's not the greatest deal now.
His argument would be that he's trying to remake the American economy, to produce more goods that are currently imported into the U.S. here at home. With these electricity surcharges, you say that the move is designed to protect your province. The administration, if they see it as an escalation and they reciprocate with tariffs on lumber, steel, and dairy, ultimately, doesn't that hurt your constituents?
No, we're looking at negotiating through strength. If he cuts off the lumber or puts a tariff, do you know whose costs are going up? It's the American people that want to buy a home. They're going to pay more for their home, or steel that they need, or aluminum. That is only 16% of aluminum's manufactured in the U.S. They rely on over 60% aluminum to come down there for their goods. High-grade nickel coming out of Ontario. That 50% of the high-grade nickel for your military, aerospace, and manufacturing comes from Ontario. And the list keeps going on and on and on, not to mention the 4.3 million barrels of crude oil that we ship down every single day. So I believe in building an AMCAN fortress. Let's make sure that we focus on having the two greatest countries in the world, the most prosperous, the richest, the safest. The problem's not Canada, it's China right now. And he has to keep an eye on China.
I do want to ask you about the question of fairness, and specifically on one claim, because I've heard it from Trump and a number of officials in his administration, most recently Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. He argues that Canada has a 255% tariff on dairy imports. The administration has cited that over and over again. Is that number accurate? Do you think it's fair for American dairy farmers?
Well, what I'd like to do is sit down and discuss these issues with them at a USMCA table. What I will tell you this, if we take the 4.3 million barrels a day that we ship down there to keep your economy going off the balance sheet, the U.S. has a $56 billion surplus, a trade surplus with Canada. I'm okay with that. That's fine. Things were going fine. Everything was moving forward. Market was going up a little bit. Everyone was optimistic. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he wants to attack his closest neighbor and ally. And his number, I call their number one customer. You don't attack your number one customer and
what do we
expect
do here, Guy?
Superlatives are continuing. I mean, it's fascinating. What we've said for a while now, at least for me, incorrectly, has been that there are a lot of headwinds out there, but the market was looking past them for whatever reasons. But despite the fact that the market seemingly made new highs every day, those headwinds weren't going away. As a matter of fact, some of the concerns were actually getting worse. And what we said was the market will have less and less room for error, and volatility was going to be a story. Well, you're seeing that now. I don't know if it was tariffs. I don't know, it's a fear of a slowdown, but it just goes to show you when you're trading at the valuations that we're trading at, everything has to continue to go right. and it's not. In terms of the downside, it feels to me like we didn't have capitulation today. People will say it was panicked. I didn't see anything panicky about it. Yes, the VIX is elevated. It will stay elevated. Panic will come in the form of a huge volume day where we maybe flush early and spend the rest of the day rallying. That did not happen today.
What do you think?
Well, I mean, maybe just put it all in context, rather than my opinion or anyone's. We know that the market has drawdown, sell-offs, drops, declines, corrections. You choose your nomenclature. As of now, we are down 9.5% from the peak, and it's lasted 13 sessions. If you look at all instances, going back to 1927, where the S&P has had a 5% plus decline, the average decline is about 11.25. The median is about 8.75, and it takes place over 30 sessions on average. So this is sort of normative. Now, at the index level, we know the market's down, what, 4.5% for the year? But the average stock is still up, and more stocks in the S&P are up than down, which would get around to say, is this nothing and nothing's happened, or there's that much more to come? I would go with the latter. There's more to come.
Yeah, I would just say that, you know, the Trump trades, they started to reverse a while ago, and it started in and around the time that we started dialing up the, you know, the rhetoric in and around the trade war. And one of the things that kind of strikes me, and we talked about this a lot, that the first Trump administration seemed to be very focused on the stock market. When you think about how they went about some of the economic agenda that they wanted in the first one, they went after tax cuts first, and they got tax cuts, and it juiced the stock market, it juiced the economy. Then they got into the trade war, which really didn't cause too much trepidation in markets, not until we got to the end of 2018, when we had a growth scare, when we also had rates going higher. So if you think about what they did now, it's a bit of an own goal for all intents and purposes. No one knew how this was going to play out. I don't think they thought it was going to play out. I hear a lot of people talking about, well, they wanted to tank the economy, they wanted to tank the stock market to get things going higher. There's no way that is true.
We have breaking news coming in. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau speaking.
We'll be back with much more.
What do we do here, Guy?
Things were going fine. Everything was moving forward. Market was going up a little bit. Everyone was optimistic. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he wants to attack his closest neighbor and ally. And his number, I call, or their number one customer. You don't attack your number one customer and expect the results that he thought were going to happen. Protectionism does not work, especially between Canada and the U.S. Maybe you should take a page out of Ronald Reagan's book.
Premier, I do want to ask you about Mark Carney. He is in line to become the next prime minister. We saw Justin Trudeau's relationship with Trump evolve and then ultimately degrade. How do you think Mark Carney is going to approach President Trump?
Well, Mr. Carney is a very, very bright individual, and it's up to Mr. Carney to build that relationship with President Trump. They're both bright people. Let's make no mistake about it. Agree or disagree with President Trump. He understands finances. So does Mark Carney, and so do I. We're business people, and if we sit down around the table, we can resolve the problem and make sure that both countries prosper, like the likes of which this country's never seen, or the likes of which the U.S. has never seen, if we work together.
Premier Doug Ford, we appreciate you joining us and sharing your point of view.
Thank you so much, and God bless America, and God bless Canada. Thank you so much.
Best
President Trump is speaking about the recent
Americans
stock
want
market
our resources.
volatility. Eamon Javers joins us now with more. Hey, Eamon.
Yeah, good morning, Joe. In an interview with Fox News yesterday, President Trump addressed last week's stock market turmoil caused by confusion around his tariff agenda. In one exchange, the president suggested that calls by the business community for clarity on that policy are just a talking point for the big globalists. Here's what he said.
I think that they say that. You know, it sounds good to say. But for years, the globalists, the big globalists, have been ripping off the United States.
And asked if he's okay with the stock market going down, the president dismissed the idea of short-term focusing on the stock market.
I have to do is build a strong country. You can't really watch the stock market. If you look at China, they have a 100-year
And Fox 4 obtained new
perspective.
details about the shooting at a Forest Hill.
Quarters.
That's true.
And you can't go by that.
Now, that's a striking departure in approach from the first Trump administration, when cabinet members suggested that the stock market was a good barometer for how well the administration was performing. But this is a much more populist Trump administration than in the first term, and you see that reflected by the president now dismissing stock market losses as pain for globalists, not his voter base. We'll see if Trump continues that approach later today, when he's expected to meet with top technology executives at the White House. We expect the discussion there will include the president's tariff agenda, also his call to repeal the Bipartisan CHIPS Act. And guys, Andrew, I was thinking about this morning. You and I were at a dinner in New York on Thursday night where the discussion was largely around this. Just how populist is this Trump administration, and how much do these stock market losses move the needle inside this White House? And I think it's a different calculation this time than it was last time around.
So it may be different in this particular moment. The question is, if this were to persist for several months or longer, how you think that changes the dynamic, which is to say, if the stock market continues to fall as you were to walk into midterms, for example, does that change what they want to do, or do you think that they're all in?
So I think there's an intellectual group who are all in, of populist, conservative economics folks who look at this and say what we need to do is entirely restructure the U.S. economy. And the focus for too many years, too many decades, has been on lowering prices, not on families and communities. And that's really the central unit of the economy, should be the family, not prices. And you heard Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, say this last week, that the ideal of the American dream is not about access to low prices, it's about other things. That's that sort of worldview. The question is how much pain Trump himself is willing to tolerate. I think the answer is he's willing to tolerate a lot more pain on the stock market, as you just heard him say, this time around than he was last time. But I don't think that's indefinite, right? I think there's some threshold larger than it was last time around at which the president might respond to stock market losses by changing course politically. I think we've got a ways to go, though, before that happens.
Yeah, it's not just how deep, but also how long.
And he can point to interest rates too, Eamon, which don't always, the bonds themselves don't always sync up with equities, and you could actually say, equities coming down, and as a result, bond prices go up with the safety, and then he would immediately talk about mortgage rates and consumer loans.
All right,
and all
welcome
the
to the
benefits
show and a
that come
special
from that.
interview with Mr. Elon Musk, who, of course, is famed Trump advisor, CEO of Tesla, SpaceX, chair of X Corp. Elon, thank you for doing this. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
I want to begin, but among other things, everyone's attacking you for your position. What are you doing in the government? There was a cyber attack on X today, which shut it down and may have been foreign sourced.
Yes.
It's a big story. You want to give us a moment on that?
Well, we're not sure exactly what happened, but there was a massive cyber attack to try to bring down the X system with IP addresses originating in the Ukraine area.
Oh, well, so that's your suspicion. Is the website, is the internet up? Is it up yet?
It's up, yeah.
It's up yet. Okay, good. But I just was looking back. Let me see if I get this right. They're setting fire to various Tesla charging stations near Boston. Shots were fired at a Tesla dealership in Oregon. Various nonviolent...
Shots fired, not a metaphor.
Shots fired, yes. Downtown New York, marching against the Tesla showroom. Your stock is way down. You've been criticized left and right.
But look on the bright side.
I mean, why are you doing this?
Always look on the bright side of life.
Yes, I'm an optimist.
Yeah. But besides that,
yes. I mean,
how's your day?
What motivates you to do this?
Was the opera good?
It's tough sledding.
Yeah, it is tough sledding. But I think we're doing the right thing here. There's been a tremendous amount of waste and fraud in the government. When you're part of the government, you saw a lot of that, and there's been, if you look at the Inspector General reports and the Government Accountability Office, there have been many audits that have pointed out that there's a tremendous amount of waste and fraud in the government. In fact, there was a report issued by the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, last year. So during the Biden administration, which estimated the federal government fraud to be $500 billion. So just because that's not a Trump administration thing, that's a Biden administration thing. So what we're trying to do is get that number down to a much smaller figure, save money for the American taxpayer, stop money being spent on things that I think very few taxpayers would agree make sense. Transgender animal surgeries, or why are we spending money? Why are American tax dollars being spent on this? The president's gone through a long list of absurd things. Why are the 20 million people who are definitely dead marked as alive in the Social Security database? Why were hundreds of millions of dollars of Small Business Administration loans were given out to people aged 11 and under, according to the Social Security? I mean, like, these must be some very enterprising 8-year-olds,
And some pretty strong 150-year-olds.
Yes, exactly. As the president said, we have an enormous number of people marked as alive who are 160. He didn't know the country was that healthy.
Yes. So demystify this. How do you do it? Okay. How big is your team?
Yeah.
Where'd you recruit most of them from? And what is it that makes you choose, the Treasury or Social Security or USAID? How does it work? Let the public know, please.
Right. Well, we just basically follow the money. We look at the president's executive orders, and we also just follow the money. So we started looking closely at USAID because they were completely violating the president's executive orders to suspend foreign aid, what's called foreign aid, but in our view is a lot of corruption. So what we saw there is just a tremendous amount of money being sent to non-governmental organizations. But actually, this, by the way, is, I think, one of the biggest sources of fraud in the world, is government-funded non-governmental organizations. This is a gigantic fraud loophole where the government can give money to an NGO, and then there are no controls over that NGO. So they've given billions of dollars, in fact, we estimate tens of billions of dollars, to NGOs that are essentially scams. And by the way, trying to put a stop to that. So
I don't want to interrupt, but Secretary of State Rubio just come out, I think he tweeted today, he has accepted over 80% of your recommendations to shut down in USAID.
Right.
So your review and analysis was spot on.
Yes. So I think when people criticize, say, what DOGE is doing, we say, well, which part specifically? Because we put all of the actions of the DOGE team on the doge.gov website and on the DOGE handle on X. So we post the receipts. So it's like, this action has been taken, this action has been taken. So when we get criticism, we say, like, of what? Which line do you disagree with? Like, which cost saving do you disagree with? And then people usually can't think of any.
No.
So
it's transparent line by line.
It's transparent line by line,
which is quite remarkable.
Right. And so, and then with respect to the Treasury, for example, the two main recommendations we suggested, which have now been implemented, was that any payments going out of the Treasury, especially the Treasury's main payment computer, which is called PAM, things like a payments account manager or something like that, but it's like almost $5 trillion a year, so about $1 billion an hour, that the payments be coded with the congressional appropriation, and that there be an explanation for the payment. Very basic stuff. And just doing that, we estimate will save $100 billion a year.
You're not really, let me see if I get this right, particularly with Social Security, you're not really changing policy.
No, yes.
You're auditing the fiscal mechanisms to make sure that, from point A gets to point B, and that's where it's supposed to get to. In some cases, it doesn't get there, or in some cases, it may go over there. But that's it's not a policy exercise. You're not changing laws. You're just doing what any business would do in a profit and loss audit.
I think we're really what we're adding here is caring and competence. And there's a massive amount of fraud of basically people submitting Social Security numbers for Social Security benefits, unemployment, Small Business Administration loans, and medical, where those are fake Social Security numbers, or they've stolen somebody else's Social Security number, and we're trying to put a stop to all of that. And that's the number which is estimated to be on the order of 10% of federal expenditures, which is, half a $1 trillion.
It's a huge number.
Yeah.
You're working with the agency heads. You're working with the cabinet secretaries.
Yes.
I saw Howard Lutnick was on TV yesterday saying you were partnering with them. Is that fair?
Yeah, what we do is in consultation with the cabinet secretaries and with their departments. So we're really trying to be, we'll refer to ourselves as tech support.
Mm-hmm.
We're really helping the department get a handle on things. Because what actually happens here is you've got this sort of vast federal bureaucracy, and then you've got a very thin layer on top of the politically appointed officials. And what tends to happen is that the bureaucracy, frankly, is in control. And they largely ignore the politically appointed people.
Why should the bureaucracy?
I'm sure you must have seen that.
I've lived with this twice. I worked for Reagan many years ago, and I worked for Trump in the first term.
Yeah.
It's like a permanent bureaucracy. I might add, it's a permanently liberal bureaucracy.
Yes, very much so.
And it doesn't. It's not a bureaucracy that necessarily enforces or implements presidential policy.
They don't. In fact, they try their best to thwart presidential policy. So the president is the elected representative of the people. And if the president cannot get things implemented as a reflection of the will of the people, then what we have is not a democracy, we have a bureaucracy. We have rule of the bureau, not rule of the people. And that's what we're trying to defeat here is the bureaucracy and have rule of the people. And as you mentioned, the bureaucracy is overwhelmingly Democrat. So Washington, D.C. was 92.5%, I believe, voted for Kamala. So this is overwhelmingly a deep blue situation.
How do you pick your next targeted agency or department?
Well, we're trying to act broadly across all departments, so it's not just one department at a time. Are you in all of them now? All of them? Pretty much, yeah.
Yes. Oh.
We're trying to make the government more efficient across the board. So yeah.
How big's your team?
We're a little over 100 at this point.
100.
Get to 200.
You're going to get to 200.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're recruiting from where? More or less.
Basically, it's software people, information security software people, and finance. It's basically, finance and technology. I mean, frankly, I can't believe I'm here doing this. It's kind of bizarre, but I kind of think that we've got this enormous federal budget deficit, and it's a $2 trillion deficit. It keeps growing. Our interest payments are higher than our Defense Department budget. That's I think was the real wake-up call for me, was looking at seeing that the interest payments on national debt exceeded the Defense Department budget, and that was only growing over time, which meant if we didn't do something about this, then there won't be any money for anything. We'll just be servicing debt.
And you know how to read an income statement, and you know how to read a balance sheet. You've had some business experience. I'm kidding, but you know about this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, really, I just don't want America to go bankrupt.
So it's a call to action. You're hearing a call to action.
Yeah.
You giving up your other stuff? I mean, how are you running your other businesses?
With great difficulty. Yeah, I mean...
But there's no turning back, you're saying?
I'm just here trying to make government more efficient, eliminate waste and fraud, and so far we're making good progress, actually. So our savings at this point exceed $4 billion a day.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very significant.
You think you'll wind up getting to $1 trillion?
Yeah.
Of savings?
I mean, unless we're stopped, we will get to $1 trillion of savings.
And that stuff can be translated. I mean, we've been talking, we had Russell Vogt, the OMB director, on earlier, through very rescission authority, impoundment authority. But I believe you said earlier, it's an audit that will not gather dust on shelves. This is actually going to wind up with real savings, bend the spending baseline down.
Yeah. There have been many good audits, like I said, done by inspector generals and by government accountability office, and they just haven't been implemented. Nothing's been done. I think the GAO identified that there were 17 million dead people in the Social Security database several years ago. It's now 20 million, but nobody did anything about it. I think you can sort of look at this as a complaint minimization optimization. So basically, if the government sends money out to, whether it's wasteful or fraudulent, nobody complains if they receive money, but they do complain if they don't receive money. And the people that complain the loudest are the ones receiving the fraudulent money.
And you're on it.
Yeah. I mean, so the goal here is let's not have America go bankrupt with waste and fraud. So that's what I'm here for, and we're making good progress.
Yes, you are. You're going to go another year?
Yeah, I think so.
Final report, middle of next year?
Well, we're just getting things done as opposed to writing a report. Like I say, reports don't mean anything. You got to actually take action.
Yes.
So the waste and fraud in entitlement spending, which is which is most of the federal spending is entitlements. So that's like the big one to eliminate, because that's the sort of $500 billion, maybe $700 billion a year. That is also a mechanism by which the Democrats attract and retain illegal immigrants by essentially paying them to come here, and then turning them into voters.
Yes.
So this is why the Democrats are so upset about the situation, because they're losing, if we turn off this gigantic money magnet for illegal immigrants, then they will leave, and they'll lose voters.
But you have President's support. He said so again yesterday. He completely supports your operation.
Yeah, well, thanks. But that's super. Without the President's support, we couldn't make any progress here. Yeah, I mean, where you'll see the biggest outcry is from the Democrats who are, they don't want the waste and fraud to be turned off because it is a gigantic magnet to attract illegal immigrants and have them stay in the country. And I mean, you see some of the crazy stuff, like where money from FEMA, which is FEMA is an agency that's meant to take care of Americans in distress. And a bunch of their money was being sent to pay for luxury hotels in New York for illegal immigrants. And that was happening even after the president was elected, even after he signed an executive order saying that needs to stop. So we actually made sure that money did stop going, because obviously it's outrageous that American taxpayer money is spent on luxury hotels for illegals. But you have to say, like, why was that being done? It was because the Democrats are trying to import voters, basically.
Yes. I agree.
Yeah, and that's also why there's no voter ID needed. In fact, in California and New York State, you're not allowed to show voter ID. Doesn't that seem insane?
Insane.
Yeah.
I say that as a New Yorker. It's insane.
Yeah, insane.
And it violates the entire Constitution and the principles behind it.
Yes.
Producers are yelling at me to get out. I don't want to end this interview because it's too much fun.
Yeah.
Can I just ask you one thing, 20 seconds? Nothing to do with DOGE. Can you rescue the astronauts?
Yes, we're bringing them back in a few weeks.
There's not near enough attention being paid to this. You're going to get them back?
We're going to get them back.
God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your service, Elon Musk. We appreciate it very much. Appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you.
I think they actually want to kill me. And the reason I know this, well, they say so online. You know, there's like Reddit forums where they don't just want to kill me, they want to desecrate my corpse.
The rage at Elon Musk is indeed out of control and increasingly violent. Protesters clashing with police outside a Tesla building in New York City over the weekend. Protests, vandalism, even arson gripping Tesla locations across the country, including a Molotov cocktail landing in a dealership lot. And breaking just moments ago, Elon Musk himself reporting that the X platform is facing a serious cyber attack, saying, quote, "We get attacked every day, but this was done with a lot of resources, either a large coordinated group and or a country is involved." Steve, to you first. I mean, you can put the two together, or Elon Musk has definitely put himself in a situation where he has it coming at this company from all angles, simply for standing up, quite frankly, for our freedoms.
I totally agree. And this is what you get for being a patriot, right? This is someone who said he was not going to get involved in the presidential election. And then as the election went on and he saw President Trump's response to the assassination attempt, that was the night that Elon Musk said, right, I'm getting in. This is the kind of leadership we need. It was a patriotic response. And he is an absolute exemplar of everything that we want America to be. An entrepreneur who's built incredible businesses, not just Tesla. You look at SpaceX, pushing forward the frontiers of space exploration. Neuralink, we don't mention that enough. Neuralink, which is literally helping blind people to see. That's what Elon Musk is contributing to our world. And now he's trying to save taxpayers' money and redirect the government because he wants it to be successful. He's an entrepreneur. He wants to build things and make them good and make them work. That's what entrepreneurs do. And he wants the government to be as successful and effective and efficient as his businesses. And in exchange for all of that, you get demonized. And to me, it just captures how utterly pathetic the left is in this country now. There was a time when the left would be on the side of entrepreneurs and this kind of spirit of building things in America. Now, it's so partisan. If you're on the other side, we're going to take you down. It's outrageous.
And he has had a target on his back since the purchase of Twitter for $47 billion. He was finally putting his money where his mouth was. He believed in free speech. He wanted to make the platform transparent. And now that is what he's doing within the government. And so they're coming after him even harder. What's amazing to me and brings us back to our conversation that we were having earlier, whether it's President Trump or Elon Musk, these are people who are putting up their sort of livelihood. They're putting themselves at risk, as we saw with the president and the assassination attempts, to better this country. This isn't about politics. This isn't about getting reelected. This is about, I think this is the right thing to do. And as a matter of fact, it's what the majority of the country, 75+ million people, think is the right thing to do. I'm proud of them. I think that they are standing tall. They're standing proud, and they don't back down. Even after a cyber attack, he's claiming a country could be involved here. It's remarkable.
What I can't figure out, and to your point, the left used to be on the side of peace, no war, free speech, but now when they don't like the guy who's advocating on the other side, they're burning down Tesla dealerships. So the violence, again, just because they don't agree with your opinion, the irony is absurd. I'm almost speechless.
They're burning down dealerships. They're going after J.D. Vance after the Zelensky meeting in the White House when he was on vacation with his family. They're doing all sorts of things, but when it was Maxine Waters telling people to go literally burn down cities, nobody was saying a word. When cities in this country were on fire and she was encouraging violence, nobody said a word. But when they get violent, it's fine.
You're reminding me, earlier in the show, you talked about the signs.
Yeah.
You know, the Musk
steals. What does Musk steal?
Like, what actually happens to Elon Musk? He gets his property vandalized. Yeah. What does he see? He gets his stuff stolen, in effect. He's got his online platform being stolen, in effect. I mean, they don't even, demonizing him would be nice.
Right.
It would be like pleasant if all they were doing is demonizing. Yes. But they accuse him of being a Nazi, and then they go paint the swastikas on his stuff. Every day we talk about him, I think, why in the world is he still doing this? He has everything to gain. But he has everything to gain personally. If this was a personal thing, he has everything to gain by getting out of this mess and managing his stuff. And he has almost everything to lose by doing what he's doing, and yet he's doing it every day.
I said this about comedians, about Dave Chappelle. It was the comedians with French U money who would save our speech, who would make sure that our freedom of speech was preserved, that would kind of break those bonds that had kind of lashed all of us. You can't say that. Microaggression. Don't look at me that way. And it's the same thing happening with Elon Musk. Yeah. He's got you money, and he doesn't care. He's like, I've made my billions. I will fight to the death. Yes. Not figuratively over this. One thing that Elon Musk did allege that there were groups funded by Act Blue, the Democrat fundraising platform, that were behind these protests at these Tesla dealerships. And it's worth noting that these there were attorneys general that have been investigating, multiple state attorneys general, launching probes into ActBlue's operations, concerns raised about the platform's security measures, fraudulent or foreign contributions. That would be a campaign finance violation. And then also House Republicans are looking for data from the U.S. Treasury about those potentially fraudulent contributions made through ActBlue. And I do believe, lawyer, I do think arson falls under the RICO statutes. Yep. So yeah, let's get the Department of Justice on if this is a racketeering influenced operation. I would show up and file some charges. I'll go to that trial.
Bondi.
Yeah, exactly. A programming note, speaking of Mr. Musk, he will be joining Mr. Kudlow on Fox Business, a live, one-on-one exclusive interview. It airs at 4 p.m. Eastern. Do not miss those two gentlemen. On Fox Business, a live, one-on-one exclusive interview. It airs at 4 p.m. Eastern. Do not miss those two gentlemen.
No, this is the second time now that they've just updated the website to delete most of the largest cuts that they claimed.
These were the biggest cuts that they were claiming, turned out.
Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington, back from a brief trip to Los Angeles. It's good to be back here with you. Tonight on America Decides, economic anxieties. President Trump holds a roundtable with technology CEOs and signs new executive orders. That's not what you're seeing there. We'll get to that in a minute. But one thing he did not do today is what he did on Air Force One last night, which is rule out a possible recession. The Dow today shed nearly 900 points as tariffs, mounting layoffs, and sagging consumer confidence all conspired to weigh down on economic perceptions. Adding to this uncertainty, the potential for another showdown over government funding here in Washington. There's no deal by Friday night. The nation is looking at a partial federal government shutdown, which could have significant implications for millions of Americans. I want to start tonight with Weijia Jiang at the White House, Nicole Killian on Capitol Hill. So, Weijia, I want to play you some sound that I know you're familiar with, but our audience might be catching up with. What President Trump said aboard Air Force One last night coming back to Washington, and what his Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said today about the prospects of an economic recession. Let's listen.
Are you expecting a recession this year?
I hate to predict things like that. There is a period of transition because what we're doing is very big. We're bringing wealth back to America.
Should Americans brace for a recession?
Absolutely not. Anybody who bets against Donald Trump, it's like the same people who thought Donald Trump wasn't a winner a year ago. Donald Trump is a winner. He's going to win for the American people. That's just the way it's going to be.
So, Weijia, what is the sense of things today?
Well, surprisingly, we haven't heard or seen from President Trump today, even though he woke up here at the White House, and we often have seen him during his first 50 days in office. But I can tell you that the White House has sent out a statement to say what we're seeing on Wall Street is a strong divergence between, quote, short-term animal spirits of the market and what we're actually seeing unfold from businesses and business leaders. They point to confidence among CEOs and small business owners and manufacturing sector. But Major, here's what's important. The president's message actually has been pretty consistent over the past couple weeks when he was asked about waiting for his economic policies to be implemented. Even during his joint session, address to a joint session of Congress, he said there's going to be a disturbance. There might be a little adjustment period. But I think people want to know, what does that mean for me? What disturbance? How much money are we talking about? How long is there going to be a disturbance? And even when he was asked about the recession and then later on about the possibility of inflation increasing, he said, essentially, things happen. These things take time. And that's very different, Major, from what we heard on the campaign trail, when he didn't talk about the fact that there might be a period of pain in order to make gains. He said, on day one, I will lower the prices. He still insists that this is the road to take in order for there to be a big structural change in the U.S. economy. But in terms of how Wall Street is reacting, we're not getting much from the president today, Major.
And the president's remarks were to Maria Bartiromo on Fox Business News about the potential for a recession. That was Howard Lutnick on Meet the Press yesterday. And yet, the White House has to acknowledge the following. All of the stock market gains, which were achieved and pointed to with great pride by President-elect Trump the day after the election, have all been given back. And market indices are bets on the future, not the present. And that seems to be at least some kind of verdict about the volatility that the tariff conversation continues to inject in the U.S. economy.
Yes, Major, and that's because it's not only tariffs on foreign imports. We are now seeing today, of course, China's retaliatory tariffs kick in on American exports. And, you know, we've been talking so much about Beijing, Canada, and Mexico. The fact is, on April 2nd, in just about 3 weeks, the administration is planning to implement blanket tariffs for a long list of countries, Major, a list that we are still waiting for, that will not be divided like you see on your screen, which is by sector. There will just be a rate for all goods from that country, because the administration claims it's in response to tariffs that are in place already on U.S. goods. What we don't know, Major, is, you know, how those countries are going to respond. And it's probably not just going to be saying, okay, we get it. What we don't know, Major, is, you know...
We have some breaking news coming in. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau speaking...
Today at midnight, remember, we could be in partial government shutdown territory if this does not sail through the House tomorrow, go to the Senate votes on it, and then it goes to President Trump's desk for his signature. But there are some of these House Republicans who have said that they might be a no on the continuing resolution to fund the government here. Let's take this shot back live outside the Capitol steps there. Remember, the House Rules Committee right now is in recess as they have been debating some of the tenets and parameters of what's included in the continuing resolution language put forth over the weekend. Only 99 pages of bill text. And it would fund the government until September the 30th. Back out live there outside the Capitol, also on the House floor. Inside the Capitol, Virginia Foxx there, the Republican congresswoman from North Carolina, taking to the podium. So, wanted to get all of this in. And we're kind of ping-ponging back and forth here between some of these shots. You never know who reporters catch up with there. Let's listen.
Shocking video shows as gunfire erupted between Santos Gonzalez
All right,
and
so,
Eugene.
Rich McCormick there, I believe, the Republican from Georgia, speaking to reporters. Let's watch.
You pass it, then maybe they don't pass in the Senate. But guess what? They may not anyways. Why not? Do the right thing, send it up to the Senate. When they say, no, I'm not going to vote for it, they shut you down. Then let the American public judge who's on the right side of history.
So you're a hard no?
No, I refuse to paint myself in a corner. I don't think that's a smart thing to do. But as it stands right now, it doesn't make sense that anything's going to be different in September than it is right now. That we have the majority for a reason, and you do the right thing for a reason. Things that American people agree on. A lot of the savings that we could lock in, that the DOGE has identified, that American people go, okay, I get that. That makes sense to me. To have PBM reform in, like we did in the original CR back in December, that we stripped out and all of a sudden it was a good bill. To have the site neutrality, things that fix the overspending on health care, the illegitimate spending on health care, the thing that's the most expensive thing to every taxpayer in America, both in government spending, business spending, and your health care premiums, the things that you guys are all mad about. We didn't do anything to address that. We could have done that in this bill, but we didn't. We didn't do our homework. We didn't get it through right. That's on us, Congress. To pass another CR, I get how it saves. I get how it's better than nothing. But it's still not doing the right thing. We had 4 months since the election to figure out how to do this. We have another 6 months, and we're all of a sudden going to make it magically better.
If Trump calls you and says, vote for this.
The president has not called me.
If he says, vote for this, would you vote for it?
The president?
Yeah, if he calls you and asks for your vote.
If he can explain to me why Congress didn't do his job, and that's a good thing. I don't understand. I'm not going to suppose what the president would say to me, so I'm not going to, once again, I'm not going to paint myself in a corner. I respect the president. I want the president to be successful. I consider myself to be the president's last samurai. I want to serve his conscience. I want to do the right thing in our capacity. I don't want to have to rely on the president to fix everything we screw up, and I'm really angry about it right now. And I want to make sure that we are held accountable first. I can't be responsible for the president. I don't want the president to fix our mistakes. I want to be responsible for our own authorities.
On the president, are you concerned these tariff threats are having an impact on the market? The Dow down 9%.
Okay, so that is what happens when these stakeout cameras are available to us. Reporters are there. They're trying to catch comment from some of these House members leaving for the day. So.